today we have with us Gordon Tredgold, who was heralded in Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership and management experts and speakers. Gordon is also ranked number 2 of the top 15 must-read leadership blogs and is in the top 50 most socially shared leadership blogs. So clearly he shares some hugely valuable information with people, as well as inspiring them to run long distances and run marathons. Gordon, can I ask you to just introduce yourself and your career a little bit for us?
Yeah, so I'm from the north of England. I was mad passionate on sport and very good at mathematics, and I think this gave me two great skills. It made me smart and good at solving problems, and pretty much committed and determined. I like to win, and I think that, along with my problem solving, have served me really well in my career. And I started working in computer programming and did that. Started with British Shoe Corporation in Leicester, and then progressed into project management and then program management, running departments, leading organizations, running $100 million projects, leading global organizations, virtual teams. And I think the ability to solve problems inspired people because people could see how we were going to do things, but also that sport aspect, the ability to be able to build and create teams, and also seeing the value that teams bring, really helped me in my leadership. And when I was 10 years old, I played in a cup final that, again, we should never have been in. We'd won 50% of our games, and we played the team that had won the league unbeaten and had beaten us twice by about a combined total of 50 points. And when we played in that game, our coach told us, "Don't worry, this is the cup. We're unbeaten in the cup." And we were 10 years old. And we kind of bought into it. And he said, "We're going to surprise them with our plan and our tactics." And he gave everybody individual roles. And we actually won that game 6-3 because as 10-year-olds, not knowing any better, we bought into the whole idea and it inspired us. So, I had a very strong belief that with the right leadership, with the right plan, average teams could achieve pretty much amazing things. So this really drew me to leadership. And so with my problem solving skills and my desire to create strong teams, it allowed me to be pretty successful in business and deliver some amazing results. And so when I say deliver, I mean the team delivered the amazing results. As leaders, we have to remember it's all about the team and not so much about us.
So, what would you say are some of the key leadership lessons that you've picked up along the way? I know that you've got a new book coming out and a new training program around that. So, I don't know if you want to share some of the aspects of that, or talk more generally.
So the book's called Fast, and somebody asked me a couple of years ago, and I was coaching them on for a job interview, and he said to me, "What are your three?" I asked him, "What are your three key strengths?" And he said, "I don't know. What are your three key strengths?" And I sat down and I thought about it, and what I realized is that when it comes to leadership, the things that differentiated me from some of the others and what allowed me to be successful were focus, accountability, simplicity, and transparency. And by having those four things and being able to bring that to a team really helped achieve some pretty amazing things. And I think those are the leadership lessons that I actually learned. And the simplicity is key. If you have a plan that you can communicate simply, that teams believe in. So belief is hugely important. Belief is the difference between success and failure. If people believe they're going to fail, they'll fail. If they believe they're going to succeed, then you're in a great position. And simple plans that people can understand are paramount. And then once you've got that simple plan, it's all about focusing on it, making people accountable. And when I talk about accountability, it's about letting them know what their role and responsibility is, and then giving them positive feedback as they do well. And if they're not doing well, then giving them the support. And then transparency is about our visibility into our progress. So when you've got great visibility and people can see we're doing well, that motivates them to keep going forward. So I think for me, the things I've learned about leadership is it's all about the team and how we as leaders inspire them, prepare them, and give them the tools and put them in a position to be successful. And when we put people in a position to be successful, most people will surprise us by being successful. Nobody comes to work wanting to do a bad job. Nobody does that. So as leaders, we have to put them in a position to be successful.
Are there any specific suggestions that you would give to maybe an emerging leader that will help them put these principles into practice, that will help them enable their team to be successful?
So I think the thing I always want to tell young leaders is remember, leadership is not a position, it's not a title. Leadership is about action. And a lot of people want to get into leadership for the power and the position and the money that that brings. That's all well and good, but you've got to be able to deliver as a leader. And delivery comes through action. So we have to act as leaders and we have to inspire those around us. And we can't just rely on position. A lot of the times we have to show people how to be successful. And that might be through example or it's through the plans and the approach. So we have to keep things simple, communicate it simply. There's we have a natural tendency to overcomplicate things. And if you're a young leader in a technical position working with technical people, don't let the technical people baffle you with technology. Einstein has a IQ of 160, and Einstein says if you can't explain it simply to others, then you don't understand it. So if you're working with technical people, make sure they explain it simply to you so you can understand it. And you need to make sure that you explain your plans to others simply so they can understand it. Because simplicity is magical. It does help bring belief and confidence to our teams. And we really need to focus on that and keep the goals to a small number. Don't get bogged down with trying to achieve a million things because once you focus on too many things, you're reintroducing complexity. And we need to keep things simple. And we need to be focused on those simple things. And if you get focus and simplicity, you're going to be well on your way to success. Oh, and the other one as well, yeah, accountability. Be accountable. Be accountable. Accountable leadership defines culture, and as a young leader, start off by being accountable. Show others that you're going to be accountable. You're going to accept your position, and when you do that, they'll also look to follow suit and be accountable as well. If you won't be accountable, then they're not going to be accountable.
I think it's such a core idea, isn't it? We often help managers hold other people to account and give feedback and keep track and all of that. And of course that's crucial. But it does, in order for that to work, it does start with individual accountability first, doesn't it?
Well,
And
it's like a parent who smokes saying to their children, "Don't smoke; it's bad for you." Yeah, right. I'll just, I won't. So now all that's going to happen is I'm just not going to smoke in front of you. I'm still going to smoke, but if you don't smoke as a parent, that's a much more powerful message telling your children don't smoke because you're into that do as I do rather than just do as I say. And with leadership, it's exactly the same. If we only hold people accountable and don't hold ourselves accountable, then that's more of a blaming culture than a culture of accountability.
it goes sharply against the notion of transparency as well, doesn't it? That sort of I might be saying something, but actually my behavior doesn't back it up, or I might be encouraging you to withhold stuff from me because I might punish you as a leader or blame you for your views or for your mistakes or for your actions or lack thereof.
Absolutely. A lack of accountability on the part of the leader erodes trust. And trust is a cornerstone of leadership. It's impossible to inspire people that don't trust you. I mean, it's just no trust, no inspiration. It's as simple as that. And as leaders, we need to inspire and engage our teams to get the best out of them. And that has to be on a solid bedrock of trust. And a great friend of mine, Mark McGregor, who's a leadership coach and speaker in Switzerland, he was telling me he worked with a client, and the client wanted to run a workshop on accountability and do as I say, and building this culture of trust. And he said he was coaching the people, and by lunchtime, it was clear to him this was just doomed. So he was sat having lunch with the team, and he said to them, "Guys, I'm not an idiot. This isn't working. We've got an afternoon to go. Tell me what's going on and why this is not working." So, if we need to do something different in the afternoon, we can do that, or we can just focus on some other skills in the afternoon. And they said, "Well, our leader talks about trust and accountability. Yeah, his wife's pregnant and he's screwing his secretary. What does he want from us again?" And he said, as soon as they said that, and he was really happy that they were open with him about it, he was like, "Yeah, this is doomed to failure." So he actually, when the manager came back, called him in and gave him that news. And the manager just went, "Yeah, you're right." So went out and apologized to his team, so he was going to call it off and everything. But the trust has gone at that point. You can't expect people to do things that you're not prepared to do yourself.
And there's another interesting aspect, in my view, of this sort of trust piece and the transparency piece, which is that often not only are managers struggling to, or leaders struggling to be trustworthy and therefore be trusted, but also trusting their teams. And one of the places I often see that is around withholding information, not sharing metrics, for example, not sharing information about the direction of travel for the organization. What's your view on that in light of the kind of transparency and trust issue?
I think it's absolutely an anathema. I've never done it. I've never liked it. I've never seen the benefit of it. I remember I was working with one company, and one of my direct reports, we were doing some restructuring, and the senior management team knew about it, and we didn't want to openly discuss it because we didn't want to create concern where actually there wasn't going to be any concern. And I found her a position in another department, and the HR department refused to allow us to announce that she was going to move until 2 days beforehand. And I said, "Well, why are you doing this?" And they said, "Well, the team doesn't need to know." And I said, "Well, okay, they might not need to know. But when they find out and they've known that we've known for 3 weeks, they're going to want to know, what else are you not telling me? What else is not going on?" And in that case, there was no reason to withhold that information. With the restructuring, we needed to withhold it because we didn't know what the answer was going to be. And I think to tell people, "Oh, by the way, there's going to be some disruption, and we don't know what that's going to look like," it just creates panic and fear. So hold off on making some announcements until you have it completely clear. But if everything's clear, why withhold the information? Why distrust your people? If I distrusted my team, I'd fire them. I'd get a new team. That's clearly the wrong team for me. And I think one of the things I disagree with when it comes to trust is people say that trust has to be earned. And I don't like that view and approach at all, because it means we start with a position of distrust and you have to do something. And usually, what you have to do, I can't tell you. So I'm not gonna trust you until some arbitrary point in the future, at which point I'll trust you. And I think that's the wrong way, right? I think the best way to take trust is to trust people from day one, and to tell people, "I'm gonna trust you until you prove to me you're not trustworthy." It's a completely different dynamic. It's much more, and it might be the optimist in me, the glass half full kind of view. But I think that's a much more positive approach to take. And If I trust people, what I find is they tend to trust me. If I distrust them, then they don't trust me. And as leaders, we leadership defines culture, and if we define a culture of we won't trust people until they prove themselves trustworthy, that's a crazy culture to be creating, and it's one that's not going to be overly productive. It would be much better to say, I trust from day one, because now you're creating a culture of trust. And is it true that some people are not trustworthy? Yeah. But why not? Why jeopardize a relationship with 99% of the people just for the 1%? Why not give the 99% the benefit of the doubt? And maybe that 1%, if you tell people you're going to trust them, we tend to set our expectations define outcome. So if we trust people, there's a probability that they're going to do trustworthy things. If we distrust them, we're already setting an expectation that we distrust them. So it's almost okay to do untrustworthy things. I mean, I know that's a lot of talk about trust, but trust is a cornerstone of leadership. It's not about fast is about the actions we need to take as leaders in order to be successful. Trust it's an underlying principle and characteristic that determines how well we're going to do as leaders.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned a couple of times this notion of leadership defining culture.
Yeah.
So, if if a leader was to watch this and think there is there is work to be done in the culture of my organization or my team, what can that leader start to do in terms of their own actions or their own approach or behaviors rather than wait for the culture to sort of magically shift around them?
Well, the culture won't magically shift around them. It won't. They define the culture. So they need to. The first thing you need to do is to recognise that. And if you're in charge of a team, then you need to recognise that the team is a reflection of you. So if you want the team to change, you have to change. I worked with a boss who he was absolutely German to the nth degree. Punctuality was absolutely paramount. And if you were a second late to his meetings, he would go ballistic. But he never turned up on time. He never turned up on time. And I once challenged him about it. I said, you keep talking about punctuality, and yet you're always late. And he said, yeah, but my time's more valuable than your time. I was like, okay, thanks for that snippet. That's just lost you a lot of credibility with the organisation. But also, as well, if you're there every time on time, then you're setting that example. If you're always 5 minutes late, why would we want to be 5 minutes late? So, as leaders, we have to exhibit that culture. And what we have to remember as well is that leadership is not a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. Leadership, people are looking at us as leaders 24/7. When I was in my last role, I had 1,000 staff, and I would say at least around 20% of them were friends of mine on Facebook. So I still have to take a leadership position in social media. I can't be posting things which are in a completely different character to how I want to be at work. So people are always looking at us. So we can't just think, oh, nobody's looking, I can do something out of integrity or whatever. No, we have to be a leader 24/7. People are always looking at us. They're always taking the lead from us. So we need to act with authenticity right from day one and do that. And one of the challenges about acting with authenticity is, for me, authenticity is about acting in alignment with our core values. And a lot of people don't know what their core values are. And it is difficult to actually dig and find out. So I would suggest that if you're a leader, you need to find out what your core values really are, because you might be talking family, but your core value actually might be money. So you're going to create some disconnect in what you do. So first thing I would say is find out what your core values are. There's a lot of online tests you can do and really do some work in that area, and then start to act with authenticity every single day. If deadlines are important, then keep reiterating that and take actions appropriate that reflect what you believe is important. The organization is looking at you. And again, another boss I worked at, we were we were delivering a project, and we had to have it done by April 1st. And last two weeks of March, we were running around like crazy. And I was sat in a meeting with him, and he said, "Why is everybody running around like crazy?" And I said, "Well, the deadline's April 1st, and we want to meet it." And he said, "Yeah, but April 1st, April 3rd, who cares?" So you can't say that in a meeting, because once you say that, you've now completely undermined everything that we're trying to do. The culture that you want of timely delivery is not one that your words are reflecting. So we need to have that authenticity around what we do, what we say, and who we are. And when you get those three things aligned, the culture will start to come in line with it.
Thank you very much for that. That's very insightful and
Yeah.
and an important one, because actually, as you say, actions are crucially important, but what drives those actions
Yeah.
is just as important. And it is easier to be in alignment once you're clear about the values, the purpose of the exercise, the focus of it all.
Yeah.
So some of the actions will come easier once leaders have worked out what it is that is important to them and what is it in the culture that they want to achieve.
Well, one of the reasons why I now do what I do is because when I started going through my core values, one of my core values is I really like to help people. So that's why I started. I've written 800 articles, and this is my calling. This is what I want to do, and now I understand that a lot more. It allows me to actually live in line with that core value. Working for corporates was great. It was good for the money, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. Helping people and leading people, giving people, helping people achieve their full potential was what I wanted to do. And I could do that to some extent within corporates, but not to the full extent.
And the impact of this work is clearly substantial. Well, partly because it's if you're impacting leaders and leaders are impacting teams and organizations and through them customers,
Yeah.
there's a long chain. That's a
Well,
significant impact right there.
one of my other values and goals is to have an impact, and you can either have an impact in one company, or you can try and impact and create a generation of better leaders. And if I can make 10 leaders better leaders, the impact that they will make will be significantly greater than anything I could make on my own. So that's this is what drives me, and I think it comes when you read my writing, it comes through as that.
And I think
Because my God, the reason why my writing is popular is because a lot of people. Sorry, I don't want to give them a value which might be incorrect, but what I find when I read a lot of books is that it feels like it's designed to make the writer look a genius. And sometimes I read it, I have a degree in mathematics, and I read it and I think, wow, I need to read that again because I didn't quite get it. And at the end of it, you really think that guy's really, or that girl's really smart, really knows her stuff. Because I tell you, I don't understand. I don't understand this. It's really complicated. But when I write things, I take an inverse way. I try and write things as simply as possible so that the majority of people who read it are going to be able to understand it and take something from it and implement it. And as I said, my goal is to help people, and I think that's reflected in what I write about and how I write about it.
Mm. And I think it's a hugely important impact. I often say that, this work around management and leadership matters because people spend so much of their lives at work that the quality of the culture of the organization, the quality of the leadership that they're surrounded by, has an enormous impact on how people fare in life, simply by virtue of the fact that it just takes up so much of our times and our time and our energy, that it really matters. I think it's very, it's sometimes people sort of say, oh well, management, it's just one of those things. But actually, I think the quality of leadership and the quality of organizations is hugely important in terms of the impact that it has on people's lives.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, but it also has an impact on their health.
Yeah.
There's a really good tool that people should look at. I think it's the Bill Gates model. I think Bill Gates either promoted it, came up with it, or something. I know it as the Bill Gates model, and it's called MCCL: managing, coaching, clienting, and leadership. And what we need to do is, when we're in a leadership position, is look at the amount of time we spend as a percentage in those four areas: managing, coaching, clienting. So coaching is about coaching your team. Clienting is about networking with customers, peers, um, suppliers, and then leading is leading. And what you'll find is that people are spending far too much time in management and not enough time in leading. And if you actually can transfer the time from management to leading, it actually reduces the amount of time you have to manage. Because management is all about today and tomorrow and dealing with the latest crisis. Leadership is about having your eyes on the horizon and averting future crises. So the more we lead, the less we have to manage. But people get sucked up into management and don't lead, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So as leaders, we have to, to be a good leader, you have to be able to step back so that we can focus more on leading and less on managing. And when you do that, leading is a lot less stressful than managing. Because, as I say, with management, you're dealing with the crisis of today, and oh my God, if this doesn't get done, we're in deep trouble. Yeah, well, if you could avoid that feeling, it's a lot easier. I always talk about boxing. It's a lot, if you're ahead at the halfway stage on points, you can just cruise towards the end of the fight. If you need a knockout in the last round to win, now you've got to take chances. Now you're risking getting hurt and you're risking getting beaten. So we need to lead more and manage less. And the way to manage less is to lead more. Let people, give people clear direction, give them the right focus. And when we do that, put them in a position to be successful, then they'll be successful. If we don't put them in a position to be successful, then we have to spend all day, every day, trying to push them over the finishing line. And that's not good for our health, and it sure as ain't good for their health. People like to be led, they don't like to be managed.
Perfect words to lead by, as it were. So,
I'm passionate about it. Leadership makes a huge difference in an organization. It really does. And I think a lot of time we people, they make leadership out to be a lot harder than it needs to be. I mean, I wrote a blog this year in January, just 4 things you could do to improve your leadership in 2015. And it was smile more, talk more, listen more, praise more. And I would be interested to know how many people read that and actually went and implemented them. Because if you just did those 4 simple things, you would be a significantly better leader. Leadership is not hard. Management is hard. Because management is about being behind people and trying to push them over the finishing line. It's about banging square pegs through round holes. Leadership is about standing at the finishing line and applauding your team as they cross over it in jubilation. It's about creating round pegs for round holes. It's a lot easier. And we have a tendency to make it much more difficult than it should be. And I think sometimes this comes back to we distrust our people, that we have to be stood behind them all the time and telling them. So maybe I should have made it 5 things: smile more, listen more, talk more, praise more, and trust more.
I think the message around trust is very clear, isn't it? It's just such a pivotal aspect of good leadership.
Yeah, and trust shows people respect, and people, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, respect is something that we all crave. So if we give people respect, if we trust them and give them respect, we're going to have a much better connection with them, and they're going to become much more engaged.
That's one of those catch-22s as well, isn't it? That if managers feel that they have to manage, they can't lead because there's too much crisis going on, that then often makes them feel like they can't trust and they can't let go. And then people feel that and they become more risk averse and less creative and less innovative. And that then makes managers feel like they have to manage more and lead. It's,
Yeah, and we end up in micromanagement. I hate micromanagement. I hate it from 2 aspects. One, I hate to do it because to actually stand over people's shoulders 8 hours a day, it's brutal. And secondly, I don't like to be micromanaged. So for me, micromanagement is a big no-no. And as you say, when you get into that spiral of not leading enough and more management, you do end up micromanaging people. And that is seriously unhealthy for you and seriously unhealthy for them.
so what would your suggestion be to somebody who feels that actually they're falling into that trap and they are doing too much management, not enough leadership, or even too much micromanagement?
So the first thing I would say is create a chart, 4 boxes, M, C, C, L, and measure the amount of time you spend in each of those. Because I think most people would say, oh, I'm not in that trap. I lead an awful lot. Yeah, well, let's measure it and find out. And once we measure it, then we can start to think, okay, how can we get out of this? And one of the problems is our challenges is we can't get out of managing today. Today's already done. We have to manage today. And what we need to do is manage today, but at the same time, make sure we're leading for tomorrow, the day after, the week after, the month after, so that when tomorrow comes, we don't have to spend it on managing. And sometimes it can be, managing today can be such a burden, it's difficult to do that leading. But we have to find a way to do it. And sometimes you can delegate the managing to somebody else. And if you're working for a company and budget's not an issue, I would even suggest bringing in a manager to take care of the day-to-day so you can step back and focus on the more strategic. And once that's under control, then you're not going to need that management. And Peter Drucker says management is about making sure we're doing things right. Leadership is about making sure we do the right things. And more often than not, I find things are failing because we're doing the wrong things, because we're too pressured, and we don't have the time to pick the right thing. And then when you're doing the wrong thing, and when you're doing the wrong thing, there's 3 options open to you: work harder at the wrong thing, work longer at the wrong thing, or stop and do the right thing. And most managers ask you to work harder and longer, but that's not going to lead to fruition. So we've got to get into that habit of making sure, are we doing the right things? Are we doing the right things? That's leadership, and take the time to do it. Step back, understand, get that self-awareness of actually where you are and what you're doing. That knowledge will set you free.